Hi, I'm Steve Kinsley. I'm going to present a poster on the productivity output and metrics of our DMF assessments. I'd like to start first of all by mentioning that Wei Song, who is a colleague and a very good friend of mine, has also helped in the preparation of the information for these slides and the preparation of the slides. So what we're going to cover in this poster is the type and number of assessments we do per year, how we do on meeting our goal dates, how much time it takes us to do those assessments, what the outcomes of those assessments are, and finally, its conclusions and the recommendations. Now again, when you look at productivity output and metrics, necessarily this is going to be a lot of statistics, and statistics normally aren't very exciting to look at. However, when you look at the statistics that I'll be presenting, you'll realize that there's something that jumps out at you, which is something that really could help out with what a DMF holder or an applicant could do to help us improve our process, give you better reviews, faster reviews, and lead to better products that are better for both the FDA, the applicant, the holder, and the American public and the world at large, that we'll have better drugs and safer drugs. First of all, let's look at the types of submissions we review. And for DMFs, there's basically three types of submissions. One is an original DMF. The second one is a solicited amendment, and the third is an unsolicited amendment. So let's look closer at these types of amendments. First of all, an original DMF is going to be a master file for making either a drug substance or drug product. It's also there are DMFs for other types of things. Even glass bottles have DMFs. But basically, this is a master file. It's something that is reviewed once, and if adequate, can be applied to a lot of different applications. So basically, when you submit an original DMF, we're going to review that DMF, and one of the outcomes can be adequate. Now, if it turns out that we have issues with it, there might be safety issues, there might be regulatory issues, now this would be inadequate, and we're going to communicate these inadequacies to you. So what you're going to do then is look at these and you're going to respond. You're either going to change your process, you might have to explain something to us clearer so we understand what's going on. There's quite a few things that could lead to inadequate. Basically, when you submit your response, that is what we call a solicited amendment. We are asking you a question based on what you've submitted to us, and we expect a response to that. Now, if your original DMF is adequate, well, down the road, you might want to make a change, right? You might have a different supplier of one of your raw materials. You might decide to switch solvents. You might decide to change a starting material. These are what would be called an unsolicited amendment. This is a change that is initiated by the DMF holder. There's one other type of minor amendment, which is again what we call an adequate with comment. And this is a comment we'll send you that your DMF is considered to be adequate for an application which has referenced it. But there is some information we would like to have included that is currently missing, that is not a safety issue, but is something that is going to improve your DMF and make it applicable to more different applications. And that, again, would be considered a solicited amendment when you have a response to us. So those are basically the three kinds: original, solicited, and unsolicited. Now let's look at the numbers we have. And in an average year, we have 2,500 to 3,000 assessments. And in the year 2020, we had 312 originals, 957 soliciteds, and 1,265 unsoliciteds. So you see the majority of the amendments we review are actually unsolicited amendments. And this makes sense because we have 30,000 DMFs, which are currently registered with the FDA. And so again, we get about 300 more a year adding to that total. Now, if you look at our internal goal dates, which is based on the GDUFA date, and we back calculate for an internal goal date, you'll notice that on original DMFs, we're at 99% of our original dates. So we do a very good job of doing those by dates. And actually across the board, we're well over 95% on our total. You'll notice the soliciteds run a little bit behind. And again, the majority of this is because of the response from the DMF holder. Again, if we send you a comment during the cycle of an application, so that the DMF has to be reviewed, the applicant submits something, review the DMF, there's a deficiency in it, we have to get that deficiency to you, you have to get the response back, and then we have to review it within the normal GDUFA cycle. The faster that response comes in, the better we meet this goal. Now, when we hit this number, you'll notice that the application, not the DMF, but the actual drug application, we're meeting well over 90% of the goals, which is our GDUFA target. So we're doing a very good job here. Now, if we look at assessments by type and by the average time spent, it turns out we spend the majority of the longer time reviewing an original DMF, and this makes sense because an original DMF, we have to review all parts of the DMF to make sure that they're adequate. Now, you'll notice the unsoliciteds on average are the fastest reviews, and the reason for this is that most unsolicited amendments contain only 1 or 2 changes to the process. They are unsolicited, so they are changes to a currently adequate process. Now, you'll notice the soliciteds take a little longer to review. A lot of those soliciteds are going to be coming from the review of an original DMF. They could also come from the review of a response to a deficiency, and these can take a little bit longer because, again, depending on the nature of the deficiency we sent, the response may be very involved, and again, these would take just a little bit longer. Now, the interesting thing is when you look at the total time we spend on each type of amendment, and again, we get fewer originals. However, since originals take longer to review, it turns out we spend about 1/3 of our time reviewing original DMFs, reviewing soliciteds and unsoliciteds, about an equal amount of time. And so this says that basically this right here, the soliciteds, is something that we actually could do a little bit better on, because the soliciteds are all generated from original DMFs and to a minor unsoliciteds. So let's look overall what the outcome of a review is. And you'll notice that well over 50% of the reviews we do, we find that the DMF is adequate. You'll notice that very seldomly is it a major inadequacy. It's usually a minor inadequacy. Now, if you break this down by type, it looks a little bit different. You'll notice that for original DMFs, the vast majority are not found adequate in the first review cycle. So these automatically create a second review cycle to review the response to the inadequacies that we sent you. You'll notice for soliciteds, we only approve about half of those. So this says that we've sent a deficiency to you, you've sent a response back, and we still don't find the response adequate. You'll notice for unsolicited amendments, the vast majority of those, almost 90%, are actually adequate. And this again makes sense because this is a change made to an adequate DMF, that there are no safety issues when the change is made. And if the change is done properly, it's reviewed. And you know, almost never would that be a major inadequacy. So what does this tell us? So here are some observations and recommendations. First of all, the division reviews about 2,500 to 3,000 assessments per year. Out of this, only about 10% are assessments for originals. However, based on the observation that most of the originals are not adequate in the first cycle, what we find is that 1/3 of our capacity is actually spent on the assessment of responses to our deficiencies. Now, this also includes our assessment of responses when we send deficiencies letters. So basically, if we can have improved applications, what that will lead to is a greater capacity for our review division. It will allow us to do faster assessments and furthermore to spend more time on the assessments and to be able to more accurately give you feedback. So it's very important for the rest of this symposium to pay attention to some of the slides we have where we'll go through the typical types of deficiencies we have and how you can try to make better original submissions and better responses to our deficiencies. So thank you. Send any questions you have regarding this poster to the DMF Workshop 2021 by February 15th for inclusion on our poster session on March 3rd. We'll have a follow-up webinar on April 9th where we will answer these questions. And please do send in all questions because we'd like to hear from them and we would like to respond to them for you. Also, here's a few other posters you might want to look at: the effective communication for strategies on drug master files, and especially the common CMC issues for type 2 DMFs and how to avoid them, because this again will lead to better original submissions and better responses to our deficiencies. Thank you very much for your time and have a pleasant day.